ethocare.org. That's ETHOCARE.org, or call 617-522-6700 to learn more. That's 617-522-6700. We are proud to have Ethos as a sponsor. We want to thank the Taste of Eden restaurant for sponsoring this broadcast. Taste of Eden is located at 38A Norfolk Street in Dorchester, Massachusetts. Call Hoper at 617-283.
That's right. Give Hoper a call and let her know that you listen to Boston Praise Radio and TV and Boston Black News. I'm Pastor Bruce Wall, and I'm going to be with you for the next hour. And we're going to spend some time talking about some community-related matters that have come to my attention. And before we actually step into that, I would like to read a press release that was sent to me on yesterday. It came from the District 7 Advisory Council and the Black Local Organizing Committee. Let's read. The title is Community Condemns Violent, Racist, Islamophobic Comments and Threats Directed at a Roxbury City Councilor. The date is June 27th, and it says there's going to be a press conference on today. Location 392A Warren Street in Roxbury, and the contact person for the press release is none other than my good friend Louis Elisa, and his phone number is 617-980-9522, 617-980-9522. We call on counselors to stop the rhetoric and gaslighting. Words matter. On Tuesday, June 27th, at 1 p.m., concerned members of the city will gather to condemn the recent spike in violence. Calls, emails directed to City Councilor Tanya Fernandez Anderson. Quote, Black men of this community will not tolerate such despicable, violent threats, phone calls, emails directed at any of our public officials, especially women. Period. Stated James Mackey, community activist and social commentator. Quote, every public official should expect a certain level of discord, tough rhetoric from time to time, stated Priscilla Flint. Quote, but this is way over the top and must be taken seriously. Longtime community activist Siddiqui Cambone stated, quote, violence against black women in this country is real. It's escalating right here in Boston, and we are not going to stand for it. Quote, our whole city is alarmed by the escalation of violent speech and threats against Councilor Anderson. Words have consequences, and we want to send a message to those stoking the fire. Be careful, end of quote, stated Dorchester organizer Mimi Ramos. Quote, the level of violent and Islamophobic speech has gone way past acceptable. We're going to be there for our counselor. She put her life on the line for us every day. She puts her life on the line for us. We're going to be there for her. We can't ignore it. We see every day what happens when folk try to dismiss it as free speech. Speech may be free, but it doesn't mean that your speech doesn't have consequences. Minister Randy Muhammad of Mosque number 11. Quote, we call on Councilors Flaherty, Flynn, Murphy, and staff to roll back the incendiary and unprecedented comments, emails, and text messages about the councilors of color. You're stoking this in a very dangerous way, stated District 7 Councilor member Diane Wilkerson. Longtime resident Louis Elisa stated, quote, "The Boston Police Department has begun an investigation to determine the source of the last communications, and the FBI will be notified as well."
Karen Wall, Pastor Karen M.
I am. It also says, "We're taking this seriously because we see it in the news daily, and what can happen when we don't. This is serious. These kinds of threats will not be tolerated." Community leaders will gather today on Tuesday to denounce the gaslighting and the threatened violence. And again, Tuesday, that's today, June 27th at 1 p.m., concerned members of the city will gather to condemn the recent spike in violent calls, emails directed to City Councilor Tanya Fernandez Anderson. So apparently, I don't know what specifically has prompted these attacks on City Councilor Tanya Fernandez Anderson, but something has happened, something she may have said. They may not like her, but there have been threats that have come to her via email and via telephone calls, and this is not the first time that this has happened to her. So we at Boston Praise Radio and TV and Boston Black News, we support the idea of having a press conference to support Councilor Anderson. She needs the support, she needs the love, and we cannot have members of our community attacked like this and have the community not respond at all. Caller, go ahead, you're live on the air.
Okay, peace. Good morning. How you doing? This is Jamal Crawford.
Hey,
calling.
Jamal, how you doing? What you got?
All right. So the issue here is, she has committed the trifecta sin of being black, of being a woman, and being Muslim.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just a lot to take for this very fragile white community here in Boston. You see, they're just now getting used to, a black city councilor, or
a majority of people of color serving as
right on a city council, or a woman city councilor or whatever.
Yeah.
But to now have one that is black, woman, and Muslim,
mm-hmm.
and then throw into the mix Cape Verdean,
right.
This is all just too foreign for these folks. It makes them very uncomfortable. And then two, she's a fiery woman.
Right.
So she speaks with passion, and a lot of times, obviously, this is just the political part. This is the part to be expected. Just that a lot of time her views and stances that she takes goes against what that other group wants. And so it's just like, if Obama came back and now it was going to be Trump versus Obama, you would see that same type of thing, because the Trump people are never going to, get along with the Obama people, and the Obama people never going to get along with the Trump people. And so sometimes in Boston it's like that, where her politic is a progressive politic, and so that old school is just never, ever, ever going to accept, her, what she says, whatever, and her colleagues as well. Julia Mejia is, kind of in that same boat.
Correct.
Not as controversial because she's not Muslim, but, certainly she gets flack for being Afro-Latina, certainly gets flack for her positions and whatnot. And this is where I say that's the part that's understandable on the positions.
Well,
this is the part where we have to do something about, though.
Well,
when these people go above and beyond all that.
Yeah.
See, it's okay to say, I disagree with so-and-so. I think that policy that they did is stupid. I don't think they're informed on this issue. All of that is in the ballpark.
But this is not the first time that Councilor Anderson has received threats. This has been ongoing with her.
And not for nothing, if you really do the science on it, it's most of the women. Kendra Laura had reported receiving threats. Julia Mejia has received threats and whatnot. Now, it would be interesting, and maybe you should ask Brian Worrell if anybody has threatened him.
Sure.
You should ask Tito Jackson if anybody has threatened him. I know Chuck used to get threats, but once again, that was more on the political sphere.
Sure.
But it's just when people cross the line now and they go beyond, I don't like you, I disagree with your stance, I think your positions are stupid, and then now they go into, I'm going to be outside your house. I know where your kids go to school.
Right.
I'm going to beat you up, or I'm going to kill you, or what. Now that's a bridge too far, and now those type of things really need to be investigated thoroughly. And because of free speech, we've allowed, and social media, a lot of people have been able to get away with verbal murder, so to speak.
Yeah.
And there needs to be more penalties. And if you read the comments in the Globe articles or Herald commenters, this is that ilk of people.
Right. Those comments are extremely negative, and people are hiding behind. They may not be using their real name, but I've read those comments, and they are depressing.
And that's the same thing. So if Councilor Anderson gets a death threat, these people are not signing it. Joe Sullivan from 52 Smith Street.
Sure.
Right?
Sure.
These cowards, they do what they do, and they send it anonymously, or they send it via computer, or whatever. Pardon me. Which to me is also an admission of guilt. They know that what they're doing. See, because I could write a letter critical of any city councilor, send it to them, and sign my name to it.
Right.
Because I know that what I've said in there is not bombastic. They might not like it. They may disagree with it, whatever, but it's going to be solid. But when you write a threat, you know you're doing something wrong.
Right.
So you don't sign it.
Right. Well, we have another call, but there's another thing that I wanted to bring to your attention in talking about this. Let's take the caller, then I'll bring the other thing in. Caller, go ahead. You're live on the air.
Good morning. This is Priscilla.
Yes, ma'am.
Hey, Jamal.
Peace. Good morning.
Good morning.
So give us more insight as to what's going on and why you're having this press conference. But I also want to talk to you both about what happened in South Boston yesterday and their response to what happened in South Boston.
Okay, so the reason why we're having the press conference is because Councilor Tanya Fernandez Anderson has received threats against her children, and it's not acceptable. The things that have been going on down there at the city council is ridiculous, and the fact that Councilor Anderson seems to be the only one that's willing to be honest with the community and let them know what's going on, especially around the budget, and how the mayor is basically, it shows in detail where the money is going. And so I believe that some of the reasons why the mapping have been messing with the map, trying to change it. I mean, the fact that Michelle Wu would take Orchard Park and all the other things she's doing, the O'Brien. I mean, there's just so much, but we want the people to know, who's ever doing these threats, that we're not going to just stand around and just let you threaten our city councilor, especially ones that's actually doing the work that they're supposed to be doing for us. So, and that's why we're having it. So, we'll see. We'll send out press release. We'll see who all comes. But we can't complain if we're not willing to stand up and fight or stand up and speak up.
Well, I was just told on Facebook that the Nation of Islam has offered her security. Did either of you two know that?
No.
I'll go a step further. I'll say that's great, but it's also inadequate. Mm-hmm. So the Nation of Islam, as they often do, they make those offers, and that's great. But there also need to be additional security measures taken. And in my estimation, and this is kind of the same thing that happened after the Gene McGuire incident. Mm-hmm. I'm really not into the press conference thing. That's a good show of support and solidarity, I guess, for the community, but that's not a message to the people who sent the letter because they're not thinking about that. For me, it's like what we need to do is come together and create a security plan, not only for Councilor Anderson, but for all of these, particularly women who often are single, attending late-night meetings. I mean, I've had this conversation going back to Diane Wilkerson. I had this conversation with Ayanna Presley and encouraged her to get security. Ayanna kind of listened, and she married security. So, we need to think about it, though, I think, from a wider lens. And oftentimes, we're very reactionary when an incident occurs, but we need to create a plan to prevent whatever those people think that they're going to do. That's number one. But then also to put measures in place for when this happens again, not only to her, but others. And as I said, I'm very curious because to my knowledge, with the exception probably of Chuck and Yancey when they were in their political stuff, it seems like the majority of these threats are concentrated on women in elected office.
Priscilla, do you know how the threats have been coming to her?
They've been coming by email. I know that she had gotten some phone calls. Emails, phone calls. It's a shame because I do agree with you, Jamal, that we do need some type of plan. But who do we go? I mean, where do you go? You said that the nation they're inadequate. So do we go?
No. I did not say the nation is inadequate. I said the need that is inadequate in and of itself. Like a safety plan can't just be the Nation of Islam providing security. It needs to be more than that.
Oh, okay. But in the meantime, right? So who else is going to support the Nation of Islam and protect?
So I mean, for instance, myself have been on. Okay, for instance, like when the Gene McGuire thing happened, some folks did a press conference. Myself, I went looking and did a search, an investigation. So for those who are willing to, do something, different that requires a little bit more brain power, we can do that. Charles Ogletree went missing. Everybody was in a panic. Me and Cornell actually went looking. So if we want to find this person, first of all, when you say things are coming through email, I know at least one of the threats came through the city of Boston's website through their contact form. I can tell you as a tech person that they could get that person's IP address in about 2 seconds.
Right.
So the city of Boston tech squad should already have that person's IP address. And unless they were trying to be a wise guy and they, sent that email while they were at a library or, something like that can't ultimately be traced back to them so easily, they're already going to know where that computer is.
Right. Well, we just received a text from City Councilor President Ed Flynn, and he said, "Hi, Pastor. For the record, when Councilor Fernandez Anderson texted me she was receiving threats over the email, I immediately notified the Boston Police Commissioner Cox and the City of Boston directly. I asked that this be investigated immediately and talked to the Boston Police Commissioner Cox, and he confirmed it is being investigated." So
Council President Flynn, since we know you're listening now, let me make these further suggestions. First of all, good morning. But further suggestions. One, as you know, this is not an isolated incident. So not only has it happened to her before, but as I mentioned, some other members of the council, Julia Mejia, Kendra Laura, even from city councils past, there have been threats. And I think what needs to happen, number one, is, yes, you did the appropriate thing by going to the police and all that. But the city, as you know, has a tech department, the IT department, do it. And all of these threats immediately need to be identified with the IT department. And then also as well, and I'm sure the police do, that's the first step they do, but it would be nice if you could order that as well from the beginning. Also, considering what we've seen in the press in the past month or so, where there was some very disparaging comments about city councilors coming from within City Hall, right? From a city council computer. So I don't know if that computer has been identified, what office or hallway or whatever that is in as well. But I think that there needs to be more done internally in the City Hall about identifying threats from within or external threats.
So a combination of the Boston Police Department and the tech folk at Boston City Hall also doing some work.
Because basically if that person is found to be an employee, particularly, let's say they're an employee and they did it outside. That's one set of penalties. Let's say they're an employee and they did it inside from City Hall. Well, then that opens a whole other can of worms. And either way, that person should be subjected to whatever criminal penalties there are. But also, too, that person should, if they're using city equipment on their job time and all that, that should also, obviously, they would lose their job, I would assume. But that may also affect, pension, any kind of breach of conflict of interest rules or those type of things. So that could have a really lasting and damaging effect. And also, too, we have to wonder if this is coming from other people in our community, like law enforcement perhaps, or anybody else. So it has to be investigated thoroughly from the city side, and actions have to be taken both from the city and also through the criminal law enforcement sources.
Okay, so the council president, Ed Flynn, said yes. The city of Boston, IT, he agrees that IT needs to be involved, but he says they are involved. That's exactly who I notified when I notified Commissioner Cox. I agree. So, Priscilla, do you have any designated speakers for this press conference today?
We don't have no designated speakers. We will probably discuss it before. I know probably, I'm sure that Senator will speak. I'm sure maybe Louis Alisa and a couple of other people. But the bottom line is that we do need to have some type of protection for our own. And I don't know if it's the police. I know that the nation do provide security, but it's just so much stuff is going on. It's kind of hard to. I mean, I can't imagine being threatened with my life for doing my job, And so there does have to be something, and I guess maybe the press conference is the first of several other things to be done.
Well, I can't read this entire article. It's very long. It says Boston politicians come together to rescue drug-ridden Southie housing complex. Now, there was an overdose in a housing complex. A person overdosed. They died. There were 4 youngsters in a rundown South Boston condominium, and I don't know if this was yesterday, but it was recent, where the South Boston elected officials, Senator Nick Collins, U.S. Rep. Stephen Lynch, City Council President Ed Flynn, Aaron Murphy, all of these folk had a tour. They were taken on a tour around this development, and I'm assuming that they're spending time talking to the people. So one person dies of allegedly of an overdose, and all of these congressional elected officials of influence in the city come together, and they're pushing a plan. Don't you think that what's happening with Tanya Anderson, City Councilor Tanya Anderson, that the elected officials should be in the forefront of getting the help that she needs, and not just leave it to Minister Priscilla Louis Alisa? Why is it that the South Boston elected officials come together? This isn't the first time that they've done something like this. When things happen there, they just do not have press conferences, but they come up with strategy that affects the people in the community. Why can't we do the same thing in Roxbury, Dorchester, and Mattapan?
Well, Pastor Wall, okay, so 2 separate issues you brought up there. I'm going to try to tie them together a little bit. So, one, why hasn't the council as a whole denounced these, threats that have gone against Councilor Anderson? That could be a good look.
Publicly, standing
together. I think what would be more of a greater look is if the white councilors, and I hope Council President Flynn is still listening, if the white councilors, who right now is seen to be so divisive and bombastic, obviously by our side, the black and Latino side, that's how they're viewed. But by their side, they're viewed as champions. So it's, depends on perspective. But if those white councilors came together, right, to make an unequivocal statement, about, and it would only be symbolic, to say that we denounce hate in all its forms,
Right.
Okay?
Right.
This woman has been attacked based on race. She's been attacked based on her gender and based on her religion, right?
Yeah.
And we don't tolerate that. And if any of our constituents are doing that and you think you're doing it to be helpful to us, you're not helping.
Well,
okay.
I think, yeah, that's good. What's your second one? I want to go back and talk about the first one, but what's your second one? Oh, did
okay,
you
and
tie
then
them
the second
together?
one, in terms of what happens in our community with the drugs, because I thought about this because it actually, I was very upset. It burned me up. Because last week's banner, you'll see there was a big senatorial tour down Nubian Square.
Okay.
Right? Liz Miranda led it. Okay. Now, we had a delegation come tour Nubian Square, led by Liz Miranda, to tell them how great and wonderful everything is in La La Land. Look at all this development. Look at these wonderful, thriving businesses and all that. Meanwhile,
you got people sleeping, living on Ziegler Street. I mean,
that's what I'm saying.
on.
So there's at least 2 overdoses down Nubian, probably a week. Much to Siddiqui would disagree with that, but I've seen it. Okay, so in any event, multiple overdoses in Nubian Square. We get politicians who come to tour, but when they come to tour there, it's the happy tour. It's the trolley. It's the we do the dance. We buy back the block. We do all these things that are like parties. We just had Juneteenth. Everybody shows out, but when it's time for a crisis, ain't nobody there. So the thing that I can give credit to the South Boston politicians about is they don't play about their community, even though their community has changed. Some people would say, oh, well, they're just, subservient to the voters there. Well, that might have been back when it was all, Irish and all the old school Irish moms were still there and all that. But South Boston ain't the same South Boston.
It's changed.
Okay?
No.
And they still represent it with the same fervor that they did before. So I'm going to say that they see civics in a different way. And in my view, I believe that white politicians are often, because they don't have the same societal, cultural pressures and all that, they actually view political or political office as being a public servant. I believe that many of our people view it as a way to come up. And it's tied into too much ego. This is why we do so many awards and banquets and picture taking and all this. And meanwhile, folks is not busy with the legislation and getting things done like we should be. I think in many cases our focus is wrong, and that's why we tend to focus on the party rather than the problem. And so that's my 2 cents.
I like that. Minister Priscilla, what do you think about the white members of the Boston City Council standing with Councilor Anderson and denouncing this?
They should, but will they? I don't really have a lot of confidence in the white politicians helping us. When you look at the redistricting fiasco, that shows you right then and there. They're not really ready to come and support and help us. Hello?
Yeah, but when a fellow councilor is being threatened like this, the children are being threatened, they're being threatened, it tips it over. And even though there's tension around the maps in the federal court case, there's a time now for the white elected councilors, not just the councilors, there should be other elected officials coming together and saying this has to stop. And I appreciate what Jamal said with making the comment, if any of the people who are my constituents are involved in this, you're not helping.
Right.
That needs to happen, and maybe that's a call that can come out today at the press conference, or a direct phone call to City Councilor Ed Flynn, President of the Boston City Council, and asking him if that is something that the white elected officials or city councilors can do together as a community.
Well, Pastor Wall, too, this is why it's important for me, in my revolutionary work that I've done over the years, contrary to my, how I'm viewed by many, if folks have really followed the work, what I strive to do is find points of commonality. And so that even when I'm in a debate or arguing a point, obviously, with an opposing side, I try to create an argument that they can no longer argue with, right? And that way, if you come with your game so tight that it has no holes in it, they have to be like, oh, wow, that's a good point. And that's how I've won over the years, even though it's, taken taking a long time on some of that stuff. It's not always quick. But here's a couple of things right now, because this is very similar to what Trump coulda, shoulda, woulda did if he was a sane person, to thwart some of his followers who were going a little cuckoo,
ballistic,
right?
yeah.
He could have intervened in that mindset that led to January 6th,
Sure.
but he chose to throw fuel on the fire instead of say, "Hey, y'all, chill out," right? So this is that type of moment, even though none of the people are involved are as crazy as Trump. Thank God. So right now, yeah, it could be a time for the white counselors, so to speak, and calling them the white counselors is even like it's all weird. Everything is just based on race.
Yeah.
But this is a perfect time for. I'm saying this is a perfect time for those folks to show their humanity, right? Beyond all the rah-rah and all the brouhaha that's going on, to just stand up on a human principle. And this is also, too, why you may know that I have put forth the thing about, Albert Dapper O'Neill and the Jim Kelly Bridge, right?
Yeah.
Jim Kelly Bridge is more difficult because that's a state thing and all that. But Albert Dapper O'Neill was right there in City Hall, right there in City Council.
Yeah,
and he is a symbol right now of that thing lasting, right? And I think that this is another beautiful opportunity for the white councilors. And I know me and Council President Flynn have already discussed. He agrees with me. I also encourage you, if that can happen tomorrow, Wednesday, at the next council meeting, that'd be great. Let's move. But there seems to be some agreement to remove Dapper O'Neill because of his statements to black people, Asian people, Latino people, gay people, women, right? So now, if we can do that, that's another point for humanity to show that we can come together on some issues. We're not going to agree on all of them. But where our humanity converges on similar points of agreement, that's what we have to capitalize on, I believe, to begin to build those relationships. Because Ed Flynn is a good example, in fact. He's the son of Ray Flynn.
Yeah.
He comes with historic baggage, okay?
Yeah.
There's people still mad at Dad, okay? Right? But the black community still, we're so gracious, right? Michael Flaherty, seen by a friend to some, seen as a foe by others, right? But how many times has Flaherty been on Boston Praise? A lot.
Yes.
Yeah.
A lot. Do we get invited to the Irish radio stations?
Heck no.
Right. And so all I'm saying is that in Boston and in most communities across the country, you will see that the black community has extended open arms, even where harm is done, where the white community still remains closed-fisted and arms folded, very, very tight. And I think we need to break some of that down for them to realize a little bit and recognize their own humanity so that they can come to the table and we can talk turkey.
Right.
But you know what? If racism, if they really don't care, if they're really racist in their heart, then they're not going to do it. I mean, I don't really see them doing it because it's not in them. It's not. I don't
believe anybody on the city council right now is a hardcore racist. That's just my personal belief, right? And obviously I don't know what they do. They might go to Klan meetings on Sunday for all I know. What do I know? But by my own estimation, I do not believe any of the white councilors that we currently have to be stone cold racist, right? Now, do they exhibit racist tendencies? Sure. That's like we live in America. Most people do. And what I do believe, though, is that, and this is from my past experience, I remember Walsh called a big meeting and brought all the big wigs to talk about race, and it was who's who of Boston, from electeds to, rooms smelled like money, developers and all this. And what I really realized is these older, particularly men, 50 plus, they really don't have a grasp on world history. They really, just like we were lied to about our history, they were too, right? And so I think that much of what the problem is how uneducated people are about each other's cultures, traditions, and how uneducated people are about racism. So it's almost like we go around calling people crazy, but we haven't diagnosed them. Mm-hmm. So let's not call people racist until we get an actual diagnosis and we can determine if they are actual racists or not, because until we do that, it's just like we start calling everybody crazy.
Well,
but Jamal, you said they have racist tendencies. So what? So explain that.
Okay, so Dick Gregory said, if you were born in America, everybody in America has white racist tendencies, including black people. We were born into a structure, right? That so like, okay, for instance, in the black community, the light skin versus dark skin thing, right? And where does that come from? That comes from a mindset that's outside of us, where now we've inflicted an inner colorism, which is a variation of racism, on ourselves, right? And so those types of things, we all function with a racist mindset because we all live in a racist society. We all have money in our pocket, hopefully, and all of those bills have slave owners on them. We don't throw them away. We don't be boycotting that. We don't burn that, though. You ain't going to burn that George Washington.
Well, listen,
right?
Listen to this. Council President Ed Flynn said, Pastor, this is what I posted on my Twitter last week. It's not acceptable to send threatening emails or communications to anyone, including public servants and elected officials. I have asked for an investigation with proper authorities when my colleagues receive threats. This hateful behavior is never accepted. And I also received a text from the Senator Nick Collins, and it's the front page of the Boston Herald, a picture that he sent me, and it says, Mayor Wu must stop politicizing public safety. That'd be an interesting discussion. But the front page of the Boston Herald are the elected officials, the white elected officials from South Boston, walking through South Boston and saying, clean up Southie. Again, it's that camaraderie, it's that coming together, it's using their political force to affect a change in their city and neighborhood. This is not just a tour they went on. This was something that they went on that's going to, the end result is going to be some movement. The needle is going to be moved because of what they did. I don't see that in our Roxbury, Dorchester, and Mattapan.
So, first of all, kudos to Council President Flynn for that statement. That's great. I think that could be bolstered by turning that into an official statement and, once again, getting other councilors to sign on and reading that officially from city council chambers at the next meeting to enter it as part of the official public record.
The official record. You want it on the official record, yes.
Absolutely.
Yep.
And not for nothing, I'm sure that because the city council, just like City of Boston, has a elaborate code of conduct and all that. I wonder if there's anything in there specifically about that. Mm-hmm. But that would also be a good time to double down on if that if that came from anybody who is either another elected official or staffer or an aide or whatever. If it came from internally, there should be a whole other code of conduct for that. I don't know if anything specifically relates to that, but I encourage that, and so that's a good move. So Pastor, as I was reading about it, and they were talking about the walkthrough at the McCormick projects, they were talking about how it's about to be renovated, and most of it's about to be tore down beginning next year, right? And then it's about to be redone. 2,000 people are about to be displaced and moved around, just like when they did academies and all that type of thing, right?
Sure.
So that was already in the wing, and so this is the thing too. It's not just reactionary. So when they did a tour, right, the results were already in the wings. It might not have got there quick enough, but the results was already on the wings because they had already secured the renovations to the thing from work that they had already did probably multiple years ago, right? However long that takes, right, to secure the funds and all that for the renovations and all that. And then, too, remember, I believe McCormick, isn't that Stephen Lynch's mother?
Honestly, I don't know. I can't say yes.
I believe it's somebody's mother. It's one of the politicians' mother. I know they don't have the same last name, but I believe it's Lynch's mother or what have you. But there's also a thing. So could you imagine, if the Haley family was in control of Heath Street, the Haley projects, right? There would be a more of a intimate attachment to it if they were big politicians or something like that. So all of that stuff works in the favor. But once again, by the time they got there in the time of crisis, there was already an answer in the wings, a solution in the wings based on work that they had done previously. So when they go there, they could tell people, oh, yeah, listen, the whole thing's about to get renovated next year. Right. And then that's going to be a big hubbubaloo, too, because, as they move people all over the place, 2,000 people they got to move, or 2,000 units. So that could be people, families, whatever. But That's a big move, so all of that. But
I'm concerned about the needle moving when we have press conferences. When we take these walks, the needle has to be moved. And you're saying that needle was probably moving even before that walk because they've been working on these projects for a long time. Eric Kennedy says on Facebook, there should be a, quote, one for all and all for one within the Boston City Council, but there doesn't seem to be in existence. What happens to one Boston... Yeah, what happened to the one Boston attitude? What a joke, he said.
So to that point there, if you remember at the time, I wrote a piece and did a whole thing, with the marathon, and we called it A Tale of Two Cities, based on the classic, right? But yeah, that one Boston, that was never, we were never included in that. You already know that.
Yeah.
And the marathon was another example. Obviously, it was a big tragedy and got global attention and everything. But at the end of the day, a very small number of people were hurt, as opposed to what's been happening in the black community since before that, after that, with very little fanfare.
Yeah.
Right? So these are the types of things. And to his point, there should be a all-for-one type of situation, but we have so many of those. The schools should be all for one, right? The violence and public safety should be all for one.
Yeah.
Housing should be all for one. In fact, there's really not too many issues that we should be divided on, and that's the thing. That's where the trick is, right? And we have to figure it out. I think one solution I have is that, once again, I've said this before, but I think Eric Kennedy should run. We should run Eric Kennedy as a candidate, and we just use posters with no pictures on them.
He's going to respond.
Why? Because of the Kennedy name?
You know it. That's money in the bank. That's money in the bank.
Right, Kennedy. Just run the last name, Kennedy. This has been an interesting conversation. I'm going to push the city council president, Ed Flynn, to come on the air with us and have a discussion and talk about all of the strategies and the things that he's done, what his dad has done. Don't you think that some of the Boston City councilors who have been there for a while should be mentoring the newer folk that are coming in? I don't see that happening at all.
Well, sir, you can only teach.
Mentor themselves. Shoot.
I was going to say you can only teach those who are willing, and so because of the perception and the relationship, one particularly a city council of color might not take mentorship, or be open to mentorship from, let's say, Ed Flynn or Mike Flaherty, right?
Yeah.
But watch this. So on the flip side, we would say, okay, well, I know Charles Yancey's phone must be ringing off the hook, right?
That's not happening either.
Exactly.
Right, that's not happening either.
So what we have is a new generation of, and it's funny, have you heard the practice of Columbusing? When white people discover something and act like it's brand new, like they discovered America, even though there was people already here, they call it Columbusing. Okay? So we do Columbusing ourselves to ourselves. This is what's now happening with the reparations movement, the Black Power movement, what happened with Black Lives Matter. Every new generation is a new generation that says, I know how to do it, even though they never did it before. They know how to build a car better than you. They're not listening to Ford and your Model T. Screw that. We know how to do it better. Never built a car before, but they know how to do it better. And that's why, talk about trial and error. We're doing a lot more trial and error because people don't realize that you could reduce your error rate by listening to those that came before you who could tell you, don't do that. It's just like directions. Don't go down that street. That's a dead end. And then you're driving with your kid and they don't listen. I'm going down there anyway. Then they drive a little, it's a dead end. I told you that.
Right.
See, so these are the types of things that we need to be more critical of. And once again, this is beyond race. This is human. This is our own attitudes. There's too much ego and arrogance right now. There's not enough humility. People don't want to learn. There's plenty of opportunities to learn. We all walk around with a Star Trek computer in our pocket that we could ask any question in the world. But we ask it about rap and basketball and recipes. You see what I'm saying?
Right.
So a lot of this is an us problem.
That's true too.
Well, Priscilla, we have a few more moments. Again, let the audience know what's happening today, the time and where and why.
Okay, so at 1 p.m. we're having District 7 to the Advisory Council and the block are putting on a press conference at 329A Warren Street based on the threat that City Councilor Tanya Fernandez Anderson have been getting. And we need to be able to protect our own. And so we're going to start with this and see what happens, later.
Okay.
How can we get the city to listen? How can we get we can't make anybody do anything. But at least if we show solidarity, if we show that we're behind our city councilors, maybe eyes will open, maybe people will think different. Because that's what it takes. It takes a whole different mindset to really make change and to advocate in the fight for change and to make it happen. So we'll have to wait and see. I know, there was a press conference last week, the week before last, and all the people who showed up was me and Siddiqui and Sister Dora, and and so I don't know where people's minds are. I know there's just a lot going on, and those of us who are out here trying to do the best that we can and support and working with our community, that's because that's what we know. So, I would hope and pray that folks will come out and support. Because we can see what's going on. We can see why they're targeting her. So we have to wake up and come together. I don't want to hear nobody complaining about nothing. Do you vote? Have you attended a community meeting? I mean, now you don't even have to get out your house to go to some of these meetings. They're right on Zoom. Mm-hmm. So, yeah. But hopefully people will come out 1 p.m. at 392 Warren Street, right across the street from the Y, on the corner of Savin and Warren. So,
Eric, you may have just answered the question before I give Jamal his final word. Eric was asking, what building is at that address and why there?
Well, the reason there, we were going to do it in Nubian Square, but we heard about the rain, so we decided to do it inside because we didn't want to get rained out.
Okay. All right. And Jamal, any final comment?
I just really encourage people, as always, do more study, do more research, do more investigation. On this type of situation, I really would like to find out, who that was. What's the motivation behind it? Is it an isolated, crackpot incident? Once again, a Herald commenter sitting in his underwear at 2 o'clock in the morning, or is this a serious threat? Right? Because there's a big difference, right? So that type of thing is to ascertain the threat. I want to double down on what I said before in terms of developing a security plan. So the Nation of Islam providing security, that'd be great. I would also encourage, contact with, I know they're already in contact with the BPD, but as you know, our guy, Larry Ellison, specifically, Detective Larry Ellison, as he did with your church, show you a couple of things. There's things that, hopefully she's already doing, and if not, when I speak to her, we'll certainly recommend about doing for her own personal safety in her home, her vehicle, these type of things, and developing an overall security plan. So, so that's it, and not for nothing, and everybody. If you individual in your home, you need a security plan. And as y'all know, I've been threatened a bunch.
Yeah.
Even recently, by some pretty, I guess they would call themselves prominent figures. So it is a serious thing. It needs to get addressed. Everybody should have a security plan because at the end of the day, nobody's responsible to protect you and yours but you.
But you, that's right.
Okay, my friend, Minister Priscilla, thanks for being with us today, and let's keep it going. God bless you too.
All right.
All right.
Have a blessed
All right, peace.
Okay,
All
bye-bye.
right, peace.
Well, you've been listening to Jamal Crawford and Minister Priscilla Flint Banks, Eric Kennedy on Facebook, and City Councilor President Ed Flynn on Messenger.